Hello, my name is Ehi Oviasu-Kahn, and I'm the chairwoman of the board of Women in Toys, Licensing, and Entertainment. Welcome to the Who Am I interview series, Black History Month edition. In this series, it's dedicated to celebrating the breadth of voices and talent in our industry. These conversations will serve as an ongoing force for inspiration as well as inclusivity. Join us as we amplify the voices that contribute to the success of the WiT community and our industry as a whole. With us today, we have Darla Davenport-Powell, media mogul, inventor, inspiration extraordinaire. Darla, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, first of all, Ehi, thank you so very much for having me. I am the CVO, Chief Visionary Officer of Greater Works LLC, and it's a multimedia children's edutainment company that produces multicultural dolls and books and music and empowerment t-shirts, soon to be virtual video games and an animated television show. And my journey began 4 decades ago, 40 years ago, when our daughter Niya was born. And my husband and I went looking for dolls and books that would reinforce what we were teaching her and that reflected our culture. And we came up slim to none. Mm. And my mother, who worked at Horseman Doll Factory in West Columbia, she worked there for 20 years and was laid off because they sold the factory. Well, she received a $2,000 pension, and she ended up giving me her pension money to publish the Here Comes Niya book and audio tape. And as they say, the rest is history.
Fantastic. What a wonderful story. And hearing about the contribution across generations, the inspiration coming from your daughter and the investment coming from your mother, was obviously going to shape who you are and shape your trajectory. That's my first question. How has your journey in the professional world shaped your sense of identity as a Black woman? And what unique strengths do you believe Black women bring to the workplace?
Well, I really think it's the other way around. My positionality as a Black female wife, mother, and now a grandmother, educator, television producer, storyteller, professional drummer, it informs my professional world. And the strength that Black women bring to the workplace, I feel, is resilience. Resilience. I remember a favorite poem by Maya Angelou, And Still I Rise, which says, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like air, I'll rise." That's the Black woman.
That resilience builds this tapestry of experiences, and it creates the richness and depth of reach of the work that we do. I think I heard that you're a drummer in addition to all of these incredible stories.
Yes.
I'm sure we're going to come to the story of how that figures into everything, but the through line of that resilience, creating the grounds for ingenuity and resourcefulness, compassion, community building, it's all part of the same story. Leading to my next question, can you share a specific experience or challenge you faced as a Black woman, and how did that contribute to your personal and professional growth?
Okay, how much time do you have?
I am all ears.
This takes me back to the summer after my sophomore year at Hampton Institute. My mother, who worked at the Horseman Doll Factory, said that they were hiring summer employees, and for me to apply, I did. And they brought me on as a floater, where I had the opportunity of going to each department. Department made the wigs, the wigs for the dolls, the department that made the dresses, the department that made the boxes. So I was all over the place, just floating. And I realized something. I realized that throughout the entire factory, the majority of supervisors were white. They were white women. And in my mother's department, she worked in the box making department. There was an Italian man who was a supervisor. There was a woman of Greek origin, and there was a Caucasian woman, and one African-American woman. And so I really, really, really spent a lot of time with the African-American woman, just sitting under her feet and hearing her stories and how she was able to problem solve. And I realized something. I realized that even though she was on, she had this title of supervisor, the demands were different, the expectations were different. And I asked my mother, I said, with all the things that you know, with all the years, and you're really training supervisors to be your supervisor, why don't you want to be a supervisor? And she says, I just don't want the headache.
Right.
From that point on, I realized that I knew that one day I had to have my own company where I could, in essence, create the type of culture that will cultivate, the talent and cultivate, the skills and abilities of all people, especially women.
Incredible. The story of both the direct insight from your mother and your own observation of how titles don't necessarily confer authority, and authority doesn't always confer effectiveness. So realize
Yes.
then at a very early age, in the beginning of your career, that you needed to create the whole universe around you to be effective. I think that's a story that's going to resonate really clearly with Black female professionals, Black female entrepreneurs, become entrepreneurs in a lot of cases. That's they come across as dynamic at some point in their careers, and that to do it well, you kind of have to do it all. Um, and that I think that says it. So, in a world where stereotypes persist and an industry dominated by men, traditional networks, how do you navigate and overcome these obstacles to achieve the success in your professional life while staying true to yourself?
Well, as I said, I have great role models. I've had and have the support of so many amazing people who believed and poured into me. And we realize and we know that no one gets anywhere without a lot of support and people, along the way. And so, again, I will speak about my parents because my mom, who sacrificed so much, she supported me in everything I wanted to do. I mean, whatever I wanted to. I wanted to drive a school bus in the 11th grade. She encouraged me to go for it. I was 17 years old, Ehi. Can you imagine a 17-year-old with a bus route? And I look back on those days and I'm like, would I have trusted my child on the bus with a 17-year-old? And see, being from the South, where I started driving when I was 9, the back
Yes.
roads, that
Yep,
type of thing.
yep.
But I was 17 years old, and whatever sport, my mom and my dad, but my mom would always say, just go for it. And my dad, who worked at the post office for 46 years and 4 months, he
Mhm.
never missed a day in all those years, who, along with my mom, gave me my work ethic. They
Yep.
bought me my first drum set. I'll never forget when my dad went to that pawn shop, and I was 12 years old. And because I wanted to play the drums, we lived across the street from a college, Benedict College, and they would have homecoming. And during homecoming, they would have parades, and the parade would go right down the street where I live. And I was 4, and I remember tugging on my mom and saying, one day I'm going to play the drums. I'm going to play those drums. It was something about the cadence. It was something about the beat. It was just something about the drums that just pulled me in. And so what my mother did, she gave me the piano. So I played piano for a while, and I realized how that was really a great foundation. But it was my daddy who went and purchased that drum set. And I look at that too, because, you know, he was the type of man that did not buy into the myth in terms of what a woman could do, a woman's work. This is an instrument for a guy. He never bought into that. And so in that, he and my both my mom, they said the only ceiling that we have is the ceiling that we create. So we had no ceilings. So it was my mom, my dad, and then my husband, who supported all of my witty ideas, my visions, my dreams. And still today, he is one of my biggest cheerleaders. So I'm grateful for my mom, my dad, and Kathy Hughes. Kathy Hughes, who's a friend of mine. I have to tell you the story. When
Yes.
I first started the Here Comes Niya journey, Kathy Hughes was my first radio interview. She, along with her husband, they purchased WOL Radio. And so here I am at WOL Radio, doing my interview with Kathy Hughes, that same station where she slept on the floor because one day she knew that she wouldn't have to. Catherine Liggins Hughes, the first African American woman to head a publicly traded corporation. And it's all started with WOL and then Radio One and now Urban One. So how do I navigate and overcome obstacles to achieve success?
Yes.
Well, for one, I take a page from those who came before me. I stand on their shoulders and their backs. And it is also my faith that keeps me encouraged, that keeps me knowing that this divine assignment that I have, that I will have everything that I need to be able to carry it out.
What a beautiful collection. It's almost like a web, right? Between the weft of the familial experiences and the wane of their belief in you and the investment and the encouragement you received, starting from your parents to your partner to your colleagues, story after
Yes.
story, moment after moment, just creating this incredible undergirding to carry you through. I think this is something I want to share with listeners now about being a specific value of Black culture, this reverence and caretaking and stewardship of earlier generations. The earlier
Yes.
there aren't just stories, they're active parts of our lives. I speak to my mother every day. She speaks to her mother every day. When my grandfather was alive, he talked to his dad. My dad talked to his dad every single day. You're a child until you're gone, basically, as long as you have your parents. That's who we are. That's an important value that I want to stress at this juncture.
And
Um,
it's something that you would say that because I talk to my mother at least 2 or 3 times a day,
there you go. Of
and the same
course.
thing with her. And now Niya and I, we talk at least 2 or 3 times a day. And so, as you were saying,
Yeah.
this whole intergenerational,
Yeah.
transference, I call it funds of knowledge,
Yes. Yes.
it's rich. It's really
Yes.
rich.
Yes. It's a
And I want to share one more story to illustrate this. I'll never forget. Niya was 11 years old and she was studying South Africa. And I knew that President Nelson Mandela was going to make his way to the States after being elected as president. And so what I shared with Niya is, well, Niya, why don't we write a letter to President Clinton to see if he would invite us to be a part of the inaugural celebration? And so we did. So I'll never forget coming home and checking the answering machine. And I know I'm dating myself, but the answering machine, and it says, "Hi, Niya, this is Ann from the White House. Would just like you to know that President Clinton is inviting you and your family to be a part of the inaugural celebration for President Nelson Mandela." And so all that week, the media, they were just, they were tracking and, having all these interviews. And so we get there and we're surrounded by, Ron Brown is there, Alexis Herman is there, his cabinet is there. And then President Nelson Mandela comes out and he makes his speech and we're just excited. So we leave. And then one of the media persons, he says, "Well, Niya, did you get a chance to meet him?" And she says, "No, but it was just great just to be a part of, the celebration." And we had gotten home, no sooner than we had gotten home, we got another message from the president of the National Press Club. And he said, "Hi, Niya, I heard that you didn't get a chance to meet President Nelson Mandela. So what I'd like to do is invite you and your mother to be a part of a private luncheon with President Nelson Mandela and his daughter." And so we got there and we took pictures and he put his arm around Niya and we gave him the Niya doll. And she presented a note to him that said, "To the children of South Africa, keep believing." And I made a promise to him that day that I would work as hard as I could to get the Niya doll to any child who wanted the Niya doll in South Africa and beyond. So that's one of the things that I wake up with on those days that are most challenging, is my promise to the late President Nelson Mandela. So I have to keep believing, that it is going to one day happen where Niya would be all over the world.
And that's something that's so powerful and resonates with me on a very personal level. I think you've answered half of this question already, but specifically as we turn to younger Black women, what advice would you give them who are just starting their professional journeys based on your own experiences and the lessons you've learned along the way?
Oh, wow. I would tell them to remember their ABCs. And what I mean by that, A, always find joy in the journey. B, be good to yourself. And C, cultivate your tribe, because on those slow days and no days, you need to reach back to your origin story, your why, to encourage yourself, and to keep on keeping on. And that tribe that I've spoken of, that tribe is so essential, to being able to just look at things from a different perspective, to take a breath, to take a beat, and to get back in the game. And what good is any of it if you're not good to yourself? That, and it's not even about just self-care, but it's about soul care, having that time, that reflection time, that time to be still, that time to meditate, because that's the time when we get those downloads, when we meditate, and finding the joy in the journey. There's always something good, even in what we perceive as the worst of times. There's always something good.
That's
so
true.
Find the joy in the journey.
That's true. And so if you can hold all that together, I think it makes this path, which can be lonely and arduous, filled with self-doubt, much, much easier. And that all these steps have a purpose. I mean, look like you're stuck. I mean, look like you're doing nothing, but you don't know what you're doing yourself for. You don't know what you're pushing yourself forward. You don't know what's coming if you can only be still and wait. That's hard, but that's where network and memory have to come into play. Someone to put their hand on your shoulder and say, it's coming, it's fine. You know, you'll be there. And then, so I hope people can take something from that and really hold on to it, because the entrepreneurial journey in particular can be difficult, because there's this constant expectation. Like, I should have hit this marker by now. I should be at this benchmark. I should be here. But nothing comes without a foundation before, that's what I was always taught by my mother and my grandmother. Nothing comes before its foundation has been set. So that's critical to understand.
And there's always that appointed time, and when you look back, nothing is ever wasted. Nothing.
That's powerful. This leads to my next question. I think we're kind of on this already here, halfway towards this answer. But how do you balance the various roles and responsibilities in your life, both professionally and personally? And what strategies do you have helped you maintain that balance? I ask because those, our histories and our stories and our families are part of us, but we're part of them at the same time.
Yes.
We're participating. It flows in both directions. So you have to be present at work and present at home, and as a wife, as a mother, as a partner, as a daughter, as a colleague. How do you strike that balance?
As my mama would say, fences make for good neighbors. So it's good to establish healthy boundaries. I didn't know what that meant coming up. I'm like, what? Fences make for good neighbors. Now I know. It's important to establish healthy boundaries. Right now, I'm in the thick of writing my dissertation on the social emotional development of young Black girls. And I'm using Niya and the Clubhouse Crew ecosystem, which is a culturally relevant multimodal resource to study self-awareness, competence, and confidence in 3rd and 4th grade Black girls. So that in itself is so time consuming. I could spend every waking hour in the seat typing this dissertation. However, I choose not to, because I have a business that I'm running, a children's entertainment business that demands my time as well. And it's important to understand too, Ehi, that it's one thing to work in the business, but also we have to work on the business. So I've carved out time for my professional growth. Last year, I was a part of the Tuck Business School at Dartmouth for an entire week, where I got a chance to work on my business, diversity in business program. And so I completed that. And before that, I went to the Robbins School of Business at the University of Richmond. They had an MBE program. I spent 2 weeks there working again on my business. And I do have a husband. I have adult children. I have grandchildren. I have friends that I enjoy spending. It is when I am working on my dissertation, I am working on my dissertation. I am focused. I am in the moment. And that's so key, to be in the moment. When I am with my children and my family, I am present. I am totally there. I'm not on my cell phone. I'm not scrolling. I am totally there, because, moments go by so quickly. And my whole thing is, it's about the now. The now takes care of the next. So what do? 1, I set up healthy boundaries. 2, I stay in the present moment. And I make sure, more than anything else, that even when there's that juggling, that I learn to integrate what I'm doing.
Juggling and that balance. And some would call it compartmentalization, but I prefer the now takes care of the next, because they're all, it's not like they're happening all at the same time. They're present all at the same time, but your day proceeds in a linear fashion. So just moving on, doing something, and then being able to move on to the next thing, and just forces you to know that I have to be present right now. I can't worry about the 20 other things around me. This is my remit at this moment. Complete it, and then move on to the next thing. I think that's a much better way to consider it, and it's a lot less overwhelming than thinking about all the plates and all the balls that you're juggling in the air at the same time. So I'm gonna write that down. The now takes care of the next.
And it's not workplace balance to me, it's workplace integration.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Especially in a post-COVID, post-pandemic Zoom world where we're really everywhere at all things all the time. It's very easy to, I'll be in my office and I'll realize I've spent 6 hours in here. I haven't gone downstairs. I haven't done this. There's laundry piling up. So that now takes care of the next deep breath
That's it.
and
Take a
keep
breath
moving.
and
All
keep moving.
right. It's phenomenal. It's like we all have this superpower. And one of the themes WiT is exploring this year is Wonder Women everywhere, where we recognize talent and celebrate the superstars in our industry, but recognizing there are many areas and localities and chapters and industries and moments where that Wonder Woman exists. So as we celebrate the Wonder Woman in every woman, how do you envision the future of women in the workplace, and what changes would you like to see in terms of equality and empowerment?
That's a good question.
Mm.
I see a world where more women become owners, where we can intentionally grow and groom the next wave of business owners, the next wave of leaders, C-suite executives, to be, as my friend Dr. Wanda Bolton Davis would say, for them to be more successful, for them to become our successors, and to equip them to even surpass us. I see that world. I see a world where more of us become policymakers so that we can root out a lot of these oppressive systems that keep us from thriving. A world where we create policies that prioritize work-life integration, that offer mentorship and leadership development programs tailored to women's needs and foster a culture of respect and collaboration. I envision a world where women in the workforce are not just celebrated for their achievements, but where they have equal opportunities, representation, and empowerment at all levels in all industries. I see a world where barriers that hinder women's progress are broken, whether it's addressing pay gaps, Black women 63 cents to a dollar, eliminating gender biases in hiring and promotion, or providing better support systems for working mothers. I see a world where workplace culture that values diversity and inclusivity, where women feel supported to pursue their career aspirations without fear of discrimination or harassment. And as an educator, I believe in the importance of education and awareness to challenge societal norms and stereotypes that hold women back. So I see a world that promotes gender equality in education, a world that encourages girls to pursue STEM fields and leadership roles so that we can help build a more equitable future for all. I see that world.
So beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that vision. I want people to think about what Darla has outlined here, because we live in an age of aspiration and inspiration, which is great, because there was a time before this where we weren't allowed to think about it or consider it or discuss it. And now as we move towards, reifying these commitments we have made, this is what she's just outlined. This is precisely how that happened, how we capitalize and enshrine those gains with ownership, with re-education, with letting people name their own, and chart their own course. And I would add that we've already been doing this. This has already been happening for centuries and for decades. It's just sort of, we were undervalued and unsung, and women posed as men, or there was always a woman behind a man, or there was always a secret inventor or someone in the shadows doing the work. The work has been happening. So what we can now move in as a society is a place where we can claim this, claim these,
Yes.
claim this identity, claim this work for the benefit of all of us, because it's already been happening. So pulling that dynamic, pulling those people into the light is part of the work that we do here, and what we celebrate. So,
And that's so key, because I call it Sankofa, reach back and fetch it,
yes.
reach back and fetch it.
Yes.
We're standing on the shoulders of, and some we're standing on the backs of, but many of us, we don't know the history. We don't know our predecessors. We don't know the people who've come before us, and we need to.
Yes. Very well said. That's the end of my formal questions. So now we have some sort of fun, more lighthearted questions. First, how do you like your coffee?
Well, I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm a tea drinker. So
Okay.
the question for me is, how do I like my tea? I like my tea with lemon and with honey. And even when we're talking about that, it's like, okay, I like my tea with lemon and honey. Okay, so in life, we're going to have some sour points, and we're going to have some sweet points, you know. So that's how I like my tea, lemon and honey.
It's true. It's all about balance, right? It's all about,
Yeah.
you can't have one without the other. It makes it a much better beverage. I agree. I like lemon and honey. And so what space do you do your best work, your best thinking? Is it walks outside? Is it the kitchen table, the dining table, in bed before you fall asleep, your office, your workbench? Please let us know.
It's the dining room. It's the dining. You should see my dining room. My computer, my books, my papers. I mean, and then my printer on the side. So it's the dining room. And then, you know, I look at it. I'm here visiting and I'm in the dining room, you know, adjacent to the kitchen where the activity and the conversation and, you know, all the good things are being, you know, prepared for our physical selves. But I'm in the dining room. I find that I get lots of inspiration sitting in the dining room. And now I'm looking out, you know, outside. I can see the trees. And so, yeah, it's the dining room for me.
Makes sense. It's our best space and where it all kind of comes together, right? Both at home and metaphorically, it comes together in the dining room. So my last question is, what is something you have learned about yourself that would have surprised you 10 years ago?
Hmm. I'm in this space of unlearning, you know, unlearning this place that I find myself in deconstructing to reconstruct, you know. And as I was speaking about the importance of reflecting and being still, some of the things that I've collected over the years, they no longer serve me, you know. And so it's important for me to interrogate my own mental models. And we talk about implicit and that explicit biases. It's very important. And so that's where I am. I'm at a point of interrogating my mental models, you know, and unlearning some things to learn some new things.
That's that can be a lifelong process for
It
some people
is.
because sometimes those models carry us through difficult times. Or I'm thinking when you're a child, I'm raising a child now and just reminding me of things I used to believe when I was 8 or 6. And obviously, maybe you don't really think about it until you're an adult and realize, no, that's not actually true. That doesn't make sense. So unpacking and reformulating and creating your own legends and your own stories and just now learning to accept that that process evolves and not being afraid of that, saying that that's still being true to yourself. That's something, thank you for sharing that. That's something very, very powerful and well
Yeah, and
considered.
children help us to do that as
Yes.
well. You know, I was thinking about my granddaughter Niya now as a daughter. Her name is Nyla, and she has created her book, What Princess is Like, for Nyla. So the legacy continues. But Nyla can ask some questions that really I don't have the answers to. And you know, back in the day, it's like because I said so, but
Yeah,
no, this generation, you know, we really, it has to make sense. And so she causes me to pause and to examine and re-examine and to research, you know. And so
exactly.
that's it too.
Exactly.
Children, I tell you, they are amazing in terms of our teaching them, but also they're teaching us.
They are. They are forcing us to rethink. It just happened this morning. I was dropping my dog Shira off at school, and I realized I kept saying just because I thought I was getting an answer, but the answer really wasn't an answer at all. And I had to
Right.
stop and think, oh, this because her brain is this little sponge. They're all seeking information, and that's the beauty. You have this moment to rebuild their world and rebuild your world at the same time as you go through those answers, as you go through that exercise. And so that's the gift. That's one of the gifts that they give, and I feel so privileged to participate in it. And I feel even more privileged to have listened and gained all this wisdom and all these answers. Thank you so much for sharing this with me and then sharing this with our members in our community. If people are curious about the wonderful work that you do, where can we find you?
You can find me. My website is www.niyakids, NIYAKIDS.com.